All right, Entree Architect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for today's Context and Clarity Live conversation. If we've never met before, my name is Jeff. I come here every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for one reason, so that we can find clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect. Doesn't matter if you're the employee of a firm or you own your own firm. Maybe you've circled a date on the calendar. You said 2022 is my year and you're on the runway to starting your own thing. Or maybe you have owned your own firm for a year or 10 years or, I don't know, 29 years, and you're starting to rethink or reimagine what that firm could or maybe even should be. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture, and they're all the need to know topics for the success of small firm architects just like you. So thanks for joining us today. As you get here, these Thursdays, Context and Clarity Live. These are special days where we're broadcasting out all over the internet. Our goal is really to break the internet because we're going out to a couple of Facebook groups and LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. So wherever you are, let us know that you're here. First of all, let us know where here is for you. Where are you joining this conversation from? It's great to have you here. I see Scott Thrift. He is, I've got to click on this. He is on my screen, I believe. He's the first in today. So Scott Thrift, you are the winner of today's John Kinney Memorial Crocheted Bathtub Award. Thanks for joining us today from sunny, very sunny. He says very sunny San Francisco. Glad that you're here. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Katharine MacPhail. Hi, Katharine.
Oh, hey. Hi, Jeff. It's been a couple of weeks, so I'm not as with it as I usually am.
It
Hi.
has been. We might be a little rusty. We've
Maybe.
taken our traditional 2-week midsummer break off, and um, just before we went live, I was still checking some settings to make sure I still remembered how to do all of this. So glad that
Yep.
you're here. Where are you
Glad to
today,
be here.
by the way?
I am in Fairhaven, Massachusetts, my new home.
Mm.
My new home, yeah. So that's where I am with my old screen because the room looks way worse than any place I've been recently.
New home, old screen.
Yeah.
A change for Catherine. She has a brand new location.
Mm-hmm.
Glad you were able to make the commute to join
Yep.
us today.
So am I.
Jessica says she's logging in from LA, Los Angeles. Was really pleased to have learned about 400 Forward from an earlier thread about today's conversation. Just donated and hoping you'll talk a little bit about it here. Well, you can be sure we're going to talk a little bit about 400 Forward today. We'll clue the rest of you. Anybody else is going, what the heck is 400 Forward? You're going to find out. We're going to introduce our guest here momentarily. I see Kurt from Flint, Michigan, joining us over on Twitch. Kurt, welcome back. Glad you're joining us. Luciana, welcome. Thanks for the wave. From Maryland, Isra, hello there from the North Shore of ho there, hi there, ho there from Massachusetts.
Hey
Glad
there.
you're
Hi
joining
there.
us
Ho
today.
there.
Exactly.
Yep.
Glad you're with us today. And anybody else that's joining us, please say hi. Let us know that you're here. If you are over on Facebook,
Whoops. I
you're
just turned it on and you turned it off.
Oh, we hit it at the same time. There you go. Thanks. If you are over on Facebook and you're commenting away and your comments are not showing up on screen, it's because you're in a private Facebook group and you either have not given Facebook permission or your permissions have expired. There are privacy rules that, of course, we have to abide by. So the thing that you have to do to solve all of your problems is go to chat.restream.io/FB, as in Facebook. It's down at the bottom left of the screen right now. Just put that into your browser window, and with, I think it's 2 clicks, you can give Facebook permission to communicate with Restream, and your comments will start showing up on the screen. And your picture will, just like Melanie and Charlotte and Isra, and Jessica and others. So if you're on Facebook and you're going, hey, why am I not showing up here? That's what you need to do. Go to chat.restream.io/FB, like Facebook. And that'll solve all of your problems there.
All
I
of
think
them.
all of them, every single one of them. I think that is what, yes, that's what Jessica was asking about. Thanks for that reminder, Jessica. Again, we're a little rusty today, so I'm glad that you brought that up so we remembered. Nicole, welcome back. She says, hopefully that Restream reset works now. We see you, Nicole, from Arizona. Glad you're joining us today as well. All right. I know we've got some other people coming in, probably from some other places, wherever you are, whether you're on LinkedIn. Scott was on LinkedIn. Kurt was on Twitch. Looks like everybody else is on Facebook, but wherever you are, welcome. We're glad you're here. And we're looking forward to a really great conversation today. A lot of serendipity around this connection that led us to this conversation today. So let me go ahead and introduce our guest. Our guest today is a leader, a mentor, and a movement maker. She's trained as an architect and born to make change. She's the executive director of the National Organization of Minority Architects and the founder of 400 Forward, which Jessica mentioned just a couple of minutes ago. Tiffany Brown, welcome to Context and Clarity Live.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Katharine. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. We were talking right before we went live that Pascal Sablon, who many of you will remember because she was a Context and Clarity Live guest maybe 2 months ago. It's maybe longer than that now. Time flies,
longer,
but was it long? So I don't know, maybe a year ago,
well, we
sometime
don't
in
know.
the last year, I think. But I ran into Pascal and some others, in her group, and Tiffany was one. They were eating lunch at in Chicago at A22, and Pascal said, "Hey, you got to meet Tiffany. You got to have her on Context and Clarity." And hey, Tiffany, welcome. Glad you're here. That was a lot of serendipity. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that was a good lunch stop. We ran into quite a few folks during that lunch stop. So glad to meet you.
Good. It's great to meet you, and I'm glad that you were able to join us here. We're really looking forward to this conversation. I think I said in a message earlier today that as we made the announcement that you were going to be our guest today, and all the social media goes out, there are a lot of folks from our community that were basically applauding. It's like, oh, looking forward to Tiffany, and some were classmates, and others that know you, some from the Detroit area. But a lot of people really psyched about having you as our guest today. So it's great to have you here.
Great.
I see Diego is joining us today on YouTube from Nicaragua. So welcome, Diego. And Graciela, hello from Long Island. Glad you're joining us today as well. As everybody else continues to come in, I really think that your origin story, I think it's important to set the scene for what you're doing, but I think it's super interesting in your journey from the very beginning to where you are now. So maybe I could start out the conversation by asking what made you want to become an architect?
Well, going back to the beginning, I was not introduced or exposed to architecture as a profession growing up. I actually loved art. My mom and my dad, they both draw very well. I watched my dad draw a stick person with a flip of a book, just like run and do a flip and a jump. And I was little. I was like, I gotta learn how to do that. It's just a stick man. And then it led to my love for creative writing and had woodshop classes in middle school, and a lot of things just happened that ended up being something that contributed to my college experience in architecture. But someone from my alma mater, which is Lawrence Technological University here in Metro Detroit, came to my high school in 12th grade and talked about architecture. And so I did by then have an interest in the built environment and how it affected the places where we lived and learned, especially in my case, being someone who is from more of the urban end of things here in Detroit, where I was born and raised. And so how I could just, explore that and learn more about it. That fall, I started at Lawrence Tech studying architecture. So just it wasn't my, I was actually thinking I was going to be an animator and work for Disney, because by then I had drawn every Disney character, like just involved in all types of art classes and things like that. So that was, I guess, my segue to architecture. Just starting there, very green, with a lot of my peers who might have had parents as architects, and maybe some type of vocational program at their high school. That wasn't, I didn't have that opportunity in high school, but I still realized my love for architecture during my college years.
Do you think that helped you or hurted you, or maybe neither? Not really being exposed to architects prior to school.
Well, I would say both, because
Okay.
even though I was considered a scholar in high school, when I got to Lawrence Tech, I just was not on the same level as my peers as far as having had certain calculus classes and things that I would have needed for structures classes and just those types of advanced learning. But I think my upbringing has contributed to why I do so much public speaking, and like my experiences have just been of interest to a lot of people who want to help change my experience, including myself. So I don't think I would change it. I do think that growing up the way I did and experiencing architecture the way I did just really built up the tough skin that I needed as I faced each challenge along the way. So that was one reason why I did start 400 Forward. So I was actually working for the first Black architect that I had ever met. I actually got lucky and got that job as a sophomore. And it was at Hamilton Anderson Associates here in Detroit. And I was able to work on project types similar to the one like where I grew up. And it was just the first moment, like full circle moment, that architecture exposed me to being able to go back to that neighborhood. It was actually a housing development, and oversee construction of where I grew up. So that was like a big part of my life. And working on another project where I was overseeing demolition for that type of housing project, that was when I realized like there just aren't the voices that will be using these spaces or have used these spaces are not at the table for their redesign. They're not part of the project teams. They're not part of the construction teams, and so that really made me start to do some research on where we are. Where are the Black architects? Where are the Black designers? More importantly, the people in Detroit who really made our city and the culture here what it is. Like where are they? Are they being included? So that's when I found out that the 400th Black woman had become a licensed architect. That was back in 2017. And I mean 400 of all time, not 400 of like the last 10 or 25 years, but 400
I think
of all
that's
time.
that's really important to understand, is we're talking about the history of the United States, the history of architects in the United States. It's at that point 400 total. So sorry to interrupt, but I think we really need to make sure that we understand that, it wasn't like 400 of the year or something.
Mhm.
It was the entire history.
Yeah, it was just very shocking to me. It was something that really resonated with me. By then, I had done a lot of camp activities, just trying to expose kids to architecture, and just as an option for their future, to be the face that I was looking for growing up. And that's what triggered 400 Forward, the 400th Black woman becoming licensed. And how can I go and seek out and support the next 400 women with a focus on African American girls in my city? That's really where it all started for me. And with 400 Forward, it's mostly about mentorship and outreach. Like there are 3 things that you might find on my website: mentorship and outreach, financial support, and community engagement efforts, where we've partnered with Ford Motor Company. We've partnered with the Detroit Land Bank, just getting girls, middle school and high school aged girls, involved in learning what we do in the field of architecture, learning about the software that we use, how to space plan, just so that they can have at least a little bit of that background when they start. I mean, when I was their age, I went to college not even knowing what the word elevation meant, or not even having ever seen a scale. And I was expected to know these things. And I just kind of had a lot of things working against me because of the things that I did not know and had not been exposed to. So with 400 Forward and the help of those who support the mission, I'm able to make that change for girls that look like me and everyone, you know, honestly, so that we can have an understanding. Going to a school like Lawrence Tech, and I see the comment and the chat here about meeting some folks who went there. I like to say that's where all the smart people go. You know, not everybody might agree with that, but
Fair enough.
it's one of
I went to Ball State. I'm not sure that I would go
Mhm.
as far as to say that's where all the smart people go. So
It's
you can,
because
Lawrence
that's in
Tech can have
Ohio.
it.
Ball State's in Ohio, so you know we've got that Michigan and Ohio rivalry there.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so it's really been very rewarding for me. It brings me joy to be able to call some of the professionals who submit applications for. One thing I do is provide a full scholarship for ARE exams through 400 Forward, and if I could call someone and say I'm going to pay for all your exams, it just brings me joy to be in the position
Oh,
to
that's
do that
awesome. Yeah.
and provide that access. It honestly does.
And for anybody that wants to know more about 400 Forward, I would encourage you after we're done with this conversation, the URL is at the bottom left of your screen right now. It's 400forward.com. So go check that out, and maybe you can help Tiffany help the young ladies, young women that are involved in 400 Forward.
Yeah, so there are a couple of questions in the chat that I just wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
Yes, the number is now 500. Yes, it's a very small move of the needle, and it did happen in just 5 years. But I think now that there's more, because actually 400 Forward started about 4 or 5 years ago, right? So now that there's much more uh, awareness of that being the case, I mean, it's obviously not a reflection of what our communities look like. I think there are many, like, there's so much more resources now that are helping with the barriers that are out there. And I think if we just continue to make that type of move, that number, it'll be slow, but it'll continue to rise. So yeah, there are a lot of initiatives in place and a lot of resources out there now that weren't there before.
Yeah. I was reading in one article where it was talking about you and talking about 400 Forward and so on. And there's the Michelle Obama quote: "You can't be what you can't see." And you have talked about uh, the idea with 400 Forward, girls that are, is that right? Girls that look like you. I don't know if I might have gotten that backwards somehow, but how important, and you also mentioned the stakeholders, right? In these architecture projects. So those are not necessarily the same thing, but how important and why is it important for young girls to see a professional that looks like them? And then, well, let's start there because that's two different questions. Why is it so important um, for them to see someone that looks like them?
Well, there are some people who think programs like NOMA, like those types of things are not necessary. And if like you can't be, if a child grows up and wants to be the hero or wants to see themselves as a hero, like they're looking for that example. They like, you, how do you imagine and be something that's not there? You know, and it's funny that you mentioned Michelle Obama because of efforts like 400 Forward and finding out that that's what my passion is. Like, it really took me down the path to meeting Michelle Obama. That took place at the 2018 AIA conference in Orlando.
Yep.
And it's just to hear her say that quote that you just made, it's true. Representation is important. And it is something that I did not have, and I was desperately needing, really. When I did find NOMA, I didn't have NOMA as a student at Lawrence Tech. But when I did find it, it was like finding Wakanda for me, to be able to look out and see a sea of people who look like me doing something that I'm striving to do. Otherwise, it just seems like I'm limited to what I'm capable of doing, and that was one thing that I experienced growing up. We didn't have a lot of people coming to my elementary school to talk for career day and things like that. And when they did, they would refer to us as disadvantaged youth. And it really made me feel like there's a limit on what people see me as capable of because of what I look like or because of where I live. And that could be detrimental to some people. I was just determined to fight my way out of that box, but some people did not make it out of that box. And so, that is why it's important. There's a quote.
Go ahead.
Question. I was just going to say there's a quote that says, it's by Yara Shahidi. She's a really dynamic young actress who I try to use as a model for all of my mentors. But she has a quote that says, "You are the anomaly if you succeed, and the expectation if you fail." And that really just speaks volumes, because it is who I am. I could have. People expected me to not do, like, there aren't many architects who come from where I come from, or designers or industry leaders that come from public housing, and because of my experiences, I've been able to be an expert contributor to books. I've been able to be featured in documentaries and all these speaking engagements, just to share my story, because it's a story of inspiration. And along the way, I always talk about how representation is important.
Does that make you a better architect?
Yes, because one thing that I always really try to promote, especially being in Detroit, where we have this resurgence happening, and a lot of people in Detroit are being excluded from the new Detroit that is happening around us. I usually say a lot of people come here to design for our city as if they're flying into this city with capes to save us, as if like they need to save us, like we need to be saved. They're designing at us, they're designing for us, but not with us. And we are capable of having that voice at the table. We are capable of talking to architects about our experiences. And I tend to shift sides of the table here as a user of these spaces, and now as a designer.
Yeah, makes total sense.
And that's where successful architecture happens, where you're hearing from those who have experienced the most exclusion. And I really like to be the source of information for what's happening in the built environment, whether it be in public housing or public schools, or just whatever, even healthcare, higher education. You need to include the users of those spaces.
As you think forward, so you started 400 Forward, no puns intended there. You started 400 Forward 4 or 5 years ago. So if you think maybe 5 to 7 years forward, 5 to 7 years out, I think that means that some of the earliest participants in 400 Forward are probably on the threshold of licensure. Maybe it's a little bit, maybe it's 10 years, but somewhere in that realm. What if you can imagine yourself 10 years from now looking back, what do you just dream will have happened through 400 Forward by that point?
I just dream that I could have built up a team of ambassadors for 400 Forward who could be resources for girls that have questions about going to college, questions about working in firms, questions about what it takes to become an architect. And that, because honestly, 400 Forward has just really been an effort of just me and my own time, and if I could just have multiply that by 1,000 and be able to stretch this out to, it's already a nationwide effort, but again, I'm just one person and there's only so much that I could do, but I just really want to stretch my hands out and embrace. And a lot of people tell me that I can't save the world, but I can't help but want to, and I know that we need to see the face of architecture reflect what our communities look like. And it's that's what the world is evolving into. And so that would be my dream, is to just make sure that I'm able to have a presence in every city, and have people who want to push the mission forward alongside me, reach as many girls as possible.
Yeah, you said something that is just tickling my brain all the time. There's this history, I suppose, of architecture, especially in the United States. At least, this is our context, right? This is our perspective, that architecture has been a profession of middle-aged white guys, or old white guys for that matter, serving generally the 1%. And you just said something, that it needs to reflect the society. It needs to reflect, our time, I think, as well. So can we talk about that a little bit? How does this work? What do we need to do in order to really develop a more equitable profession? And I'm thinking of that not only in terms of people working in, but people that we're serving as clients. What needs to happen?
I think we continue to educate as far as our clients go. Like, there are a lot of times when we have these community engagement efforts, and now I think architects and those in the built environment are learning more and more that we need the buy-in of the community. We need the buy-in of the folks in the neighborhoods to have a successful piece of architecture there. And if they don't know what we're doing or understand what we're doing, I think they don't really value it or understand it. And that's why we feel like we're not paid what we should be. And we have the same education and spend the same amount of money on college as doctors and lawyers, but they're paid so much more than we are. It's because the value of architecture needs to increase. So, I mean, if we continue to educate the public about what we do and why it's important that you don't just go around us to a contractor or an engineer who thinks they can do it. That's what it takes. It takes everyone to just make this effort to get the public to understand what we do, for one. And then as far as architects and designers in general, we just need to make sure that we're doing the research when we're coming into these cities. We're coming in with good intentions. We're not just coming in because it's affecting the bottom line of our projects and our firm profits. We have to take the time to provide opportunities to people that don't look like you. And does that mean you mentor someone who does look like you? Absolutely. That's how one of the ways that I got here is when I was working in a firm, most of the men in leadership or the people in leadership are white male in this industry, especially. And so they are the ones who are able to offer the opportunities to people who look like me. And a lot of times, if they are more comfortable doing that with someone who they can relate to, I've seen too many times where there's someone that I've gone to college with, or we've come out in the same year, and he's in a position where he's just two 80-year-old guys away from becoming CEO of that company. So the second they retire, but then there's me who has more education and experience than he does. I wouldn't get that opportunity, and I'm sitting there and I know that. And there are so many situations like that where we're either set up for failure or we're just not awarded the opportunity. So I became a project manager because I was given that opportunity by two white men at Smith Group. And Carl and Jeff Hausman just became a fellow back in Chicago, but I trusted them. I know that they weren't asking me to do this because they needed a Black person to be on this project team. They knew that I would not be going for that. They knew that I wanted to eventually be in executive leadership and project management. And so they saw an opportunity for me on a project that they could have very easily walked away from. It was not something billions of dollars that Smith Group would have gotten. But they took that approach and provided the support that I needed to make sure that I was getting trained, to make sure that I knew what to do and where to be. And they were my personal mentors, and so now to be in a position where I can write a letter of recommendation for Jeff on his fellowship, and like these things like are really the vehicles that got me to where I am. And that's why it's important to have you guys as our allies, because it's not us who make the biggest impact. It's going to be you guys that are in the position to provide those opportunities. And I have a Master of Architecture, but I also have an MBA. So I already knew at Lawrence Tech that I did not want to own my own firm, and I did not want to be project architect. And I knew that our degrees in architecture are very specific to architecture. So having an MBA really helped me become a well-rounded manager and go into construction management and go into then project management and now into association management. But in all those arenas, it's pretty much, led and paved out by white male. So that's why that partnership and that understanding is necessary. It's important.
So along those lines, we kind of briefly discussed this before when we were backstage, but is it helpful for all of us to support NOMA, like non-minority architects? Would that be a welcome thing, or should we just not?
So it absolutely is a welcome thing. We have a lot of members who are white male, a lot of members who are Latina, a lot of members who are Asian. We have had an Asian president of NOMA. NOMA was started by 13 men, 12 of them African-American men, because it was an effort to try to provide an opportunity for Black architects to get more project work and more visibility and just be acknowledged in this industry 50 years ago. And at that time, Whitney Young was making a speech to folks at AIA saying, we need to do something now, or we are doing a disservice to those who are coming down the pipeline. And I always say that he's talking about me, the Jane Jacobs, the Robert Moses fight. Like I am a resource of that type of environment that Robert Moses was running around creating in New York with public housing and trying to shut people in who are low income and exclude them. But because there are our allies who are not African American, like we need that partnership. And we have partnerships with AIA and NCARB, which is known to be, was recently on blast for having such a white male dominating board of directors. The NAB, ACSA, AIAS, those are the six, and now that's including NOMA. Those are the six organizations who we call the Architecture Alliance that shape the industry of architecture, and none of them look like NOMA. Everyone's more than welcome to partner with us and be a member and come to our conference in October. It is in Nashville this year, Halloween weekend. The same weekend as the Venice Biennale, we're going to have a masquerade ball that is themed Venetian Carnival. So we have student chapters that don't have Black members. It's about who is wanting to partner with us to push our mission, and that is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and most importantly, justice in our communities.
Okay.
So how other than the minority aspect of it, and I know, to me, that's sort of the umbrella piece of it. How is NOMA functionally different than, I guess, specifically AIA? It's obviously different than NCARB and NAB, and functionally. But how is NOMA different than AIA? What are you doing that is what are you doing that's different or in a different way?
So I think the scale of NOMA makes a big difference. Even at our conferences, you would be able to sit next to a Phil Freelon or a Gabrielle Bullock or even a David Ajay and meet them and learn from them, and you're not kind of getting swallowed up at a conference that has 20,000 people. I think another thing that we're doing is we have the representation, first of all, within NOMA to go out into communities and into colleges and to student organizations and show that representation that's there. We do a lot of that through Project Pipeline. I think Project Pipeline is a very unique program where we go into cities and we expose a lot of the youth to architecture as a profession and what we do with these summer camps. They go to middle. There's a question in the chat where someone was asking about going after younger kids. Yeah. And hey, someone's dialing in from Southwest Detroit. So
that's Will Marquez. I got to say hi to Will.
How you doing, Will? And just being able to go in through Project Pipeline and create, just very young designers or urban planners or any type of design or anything STEM or STEAM related, we're able to reach that demographic that's missing from the pipeline. So it really is fun to just really talk to some sixth graders about how, for me, the example that I use is Roblox. Like they're all pretty familiar with that. They know Minecraft. They're creating a virtual world, and that's what architects do in 3D design, and Revit and everything related to BIM. And so they're kind of already exposed to it. I think there are some tight knit elements that NOMA has. Like we are very family oriented. Our conferences are sort of like a family reunion, like it's just a familial environment. It's very friendly and warming and just nice to see this demographic that is missing from what we really learn in college and in firm culture. Mostly European art and designers and architecture is what is beautiful and what is relevant and what is scholastic, So that's what I think NOMA brings is it's just a huge ball of that representation that's missing from the larger organizations. The efforts, the programs, the resources, like those are the things that we really are developing, and they've been most useful.
Do you have any goals that are different than AIA?
I would hope AIA has the same goals as NOMA does. Our mission just simply states that we want to ensure justice, equity, diversity, inclusion in communities of color. It's very specific to communities of color, and that's probably what makes us different from AIA.
Sure.
And that effort comes with everyone who has that mission in mind. It's that's our mission, that's our goal, that's what sets us apart from AIA. That's a good question. I'm not something I've been asked before.
Well, where do we need to push harder? Whether we're thinking about NOMA or AIA or anybody else, and I'm not trying to pick on AIA, as a member for a lot of years, there are always areas where we can work harder and we can improve and we can push further. What areas do you see? It's 2022. The world has changed a lot in the last 3 years. In a lot of respects, I believe the world needs to change a lot more. Are there areas that you think, whether it's AI or NOMA, again, I'm not trying to call anybody on the carpet, but are there areas where we really need to push harder, faster?
I would say access. I think AIA and along with the other alliances control what architecture is and looks like, and who is able to become licensed and who is able to graduate one of these accredited schools of architecture. I think there are a lot of systems in place that were designed to filter out and exclude. And I think AIA and NCARB specifically are doing the work to try to look inward and see what biases are there, look inward and see what they can change, look inward to see, as industry leaders, what they can do to show other organizations and other industries and the firms and the schools what to do, because a lot of people follow their lead. And one thing that I think was impactful was hiring Lakeisha Woods. And I didn't think AIA was ready for that type of change. When AIA was looking for the next CEO, I knew, you know, it might be someone young. It was going to be something new and fresh. I did not think it was going to be a Black woman. I didn't think their membership was ready for that. And I'm also a member of AIA, so I would say ours. I was definitely devastated and surprised and pleased to see that announcement. I was shocked, and it was just warming to me to be able to see another executive director and CEO who looks like me at AIA in that role. So it was just very meaningful. And I remember when I first met Lakeisha, we went to dinner when she first started, and we were talking about how iconic it would be with Pascal and the newly elected 2024 elect Kim Dowdell, those two Black women in position of presidencies at our organizations, along with Lakeisha and I as CEO and ED. You know, it's never happened before. It's historic. It's inspiring. It's something that, you know, it's just, I'm excited, you know, and I know that different organizations have different paths to leadership. NOMA has a specific path to leadership of our organization. So I think NCARB, now having more conversations with NCARB where they're trying to find out what they can do and they're putting their work behind it. They did just elect about 5 white men to their board last month. But this is the pool that, this is what the pool looks like, that where their presidents and their leadership comes from. And eventually we will get there, but we're learning more about, or trying to get them to understand that they need to be more, someone says NCARB needs to go away. Now I've lost my train of thought because that's funny. I mean, I've been working very closely with Bayless and Mike, who are the president and the now president, and Alfred, who's the immediate past president. Mike Armstrong is the ED there, and they're like, we've been able to tell them, you need to be more transparent about what the process is. You need to be making sure that if we are able to get some folks on to your board at the state level, because that's where it starts, that they have the support they need to continue to climb that ladder. And NCARB doesn't feel very welcoming to people in general, you know, and that's something that they're trying to work on. So we've got a major project with them called Baseline on Belonging, where we're trying to really dissect and understand what NCARB could do specifically to help NOMA members. And it's not going to be an immediate change, but it's going to be some very focused and intentional actions and solutions. And that's what I would like to see both AIA and NCARB and everyone else who leads this industry doing that. We can't continue to be a petri dish for surveys and pulling data, and then nothing else comes out of that except a report. What are the solutions? What are the action items that are going to happen from this? And one of those major things is access at a collegiate level, at firm culture, the licensure process, the accreditation process, because a lot of us are going to community colleges that don't really allow us to become licensed down the line. So it just takes the effort of all of us, and not for us to be working in these silos that everyone's used to being in.
You just cracked the door open to one of my um, favorite or least favorite topics, I guess, depending on how I think about it. So apologies to everybody, but I'm going down this road. I see the total alignment between AIA, NCARB, and NAB. You can find the exact wording and quotes from all of the organizations where they talk about path to licensure. Um, when I teach my pro practice class, that's one of the things that I'm required to cover, I guess. We just went through reaccreditation, so that was one of the boxes that had to be checked. But I don't think that's the appropriate language. It's my personal feeling because I don't think it's inclusive. I have a question as to whether or not everyone that goes to architecture school needs to become a licensed architect or registered or whatever your state calls it. Um, I prefer path to the profession because I think that opens the door to Lawrence Tech, to community colleges, to Ball State, where I teach,
Mm-hmm.
to SciArc, to other places. I think it's more realistic about relative to what the profession actually needs. My personal belief, and I think it also leaves the door open for all of the impact you can make beyond school, certainly, because that's that little bit of context,
Right.
but beyond school and what you can do with your training and the impact you can make in your community or whatever it is that you want to do. You can executive director of NOMA, start 400 forward, or sky's the limit. I mean, we need a lot of people doing a lot of things. So that's one that really gets me is when we're debating what is somebody called, are they called an intern, or are they called a whatever path to licensure and all of those things. What do we need to do to going back to before they're sixth graders, right? Going back to
Mm-hmm.
that part of the conversation, what do we do to make the entire journey more inclusive? I love the idea of being more transparent because I really do think that's a huge problem. But I think even the semantics are problematic at this point.
I agree. So what we can do for sixth graders and middle schoolers, and a lot of times those kids, they know what they want to be and do for a career. And now, especially if they're showing some interest in engineering, you have colleges going after them in middle school, offering them scholarships, trying to guarantee that they're going to come to their school and study. They're going after middle schoolers. So if we can get to them and just make sure we're teaching them that it's a noble thing to become an architect. Of course, it's not going to be something that is easily handed out. And you can just if you're responsible for the life, safety, and the health, safety, and welfare of the public. It's a noble thing to do that. It feels very elitist to be an architect and study architecture. It feels very like people see us as unapproachable. People see us as way up here and not being able to be reached or touched, and it's something that they're not capable of doing. There are times when I felt that way in college, that it was not a reachable career for me. And as a sixth grader, I don't think I would have ever thought I could be an architect. And so we just need to make sure that we are showing the versatility of what you can do with an architecture degree. I know people who work for Pixar. I know people who do work for Disney that have backgrounds in architecture. I know people who are doing amazing things and specifications. Hello, Amy Baker, my LTU fellow alumni, who is doing amazing things in that realm of specifications. Just it doesn't really. We have to make it feel like more of a reachable. Oh, Amy's here, and I could see her in the chat, so that's that's what took me there. The semantics of it all, just I mean, professional practice was not my favorite class. I think it was mostly because of my instructor, but it was very informing as to, you know, what you need to do and what you need to be. I mean, just redefining a lot of these things, even the SHW itself. That's a requirement to the path of licensure, right? So um, the people who experience the space should be the experts of like who are deemed the experts is part of the semantics that I'm concerned with. Just not even learning about a Black architect in college, you know, at all. I mean, when I met Rainey Hamilton, I was in my 3rd year of college. He owns the firm that I got the job at, but um, you would think that it's just so simple. When people ask us these things, it really for us is about making sure that it feels it's an industry or a profession that helps you feel like you belong. There are a lot of times where I didn't feel like I belonged in this industry, you know, and I was made to feel that way by instructors. I was made to feel that way by peers and coworkers, and um, I think now we're in a position because so many people, like I think after the murder of George Floyd and the microscope that's been put on all things that have still have systemic racism embedded in the processes. Now everybody's wanting to um, really find out what can be done, and for us, it's just like it's always been something that I talked about before that happened, you know, and experiencing architecture as a 6th grader or as a 5th grader. I actually have a 5th grader now who's about to go to 6th grade. And she's been exposed to lawyers and architects and engineers, and she knows my friends, and these all these folks are people who she's had the ability to meet and be around and learn about what they do. That wasn't the case for me, you know. So now we're in this position where we don't have the talent pool where everybody wants to diversify. Everybody wants someone to come to their school and diversify their student body or their firm. Um, but it is those folks who are graduating college right now that are going to make that change and make that difference. And graduating high school, they are the generation that is going to populate this pool that we need. If we have more instructors like you who understand that and who care, because there are some that do not. They feel the opposite of what you feel. They don't mind.
Yes. Oh,
I
yeah.
was at an NCAR meeting, their annual business meeting last month. This is the first time or second time that NOMA's been at this meeting. And someone stood up at the microphone and basically said, you guys, like, basically, I feel like he was saying that we are being treated as victims and acting like victims. And just some of the feedback I got from being in certain environments where they feel like diversifying our uh, profession means lowering the bar, and that's not the case. I
Right.
was I was at a school where no one came to my school to talk about architecture, but I was that one person in that auditorium that recruiter spoke to. All it just takes is one person sometimes. That person was me, you know? And it doesn't mean you need to lower the bar. It means you need to provide the opportunity and really stand on your word and put your money where your mouth is, or your effort where your mouth is, and be there to help make that change and drive that change. So I wonder if I answered your question, because I kind of went on some topic there, but
You no, it's I really appreciate what you're talking about. And you said um, you talked about architects not seeming as like they're approachable. And you went on to talk about it in the context of the 6th grader and even 6th grade you going, oh, I can't imagine being an architect. But I wonder, if we flip the script on that a little bit and talk about the stakeholders in a project, right? If we come back to that context, is is that something? I to me, I think that's something that the profession struggles with all the time. I don't. why would I hire an architect? Oh, I don't know any. It's sort of the same conversation in a way. I don't know any. Oh, they're really expensive. Oh, there's all the stereotypes. So, in terms of architects being approachable, you've mentioned public housing projects. I lived in Chicago for 20 some odd years. We had Cabrini Green, we had Robert Taylor Homes, um, infamous places.
Mhm.
When you have those environments and stakeholders in that although those two don't really exist in that form anymore, but when you have those types of environments, stakeholders from those types of environments, and architects seem unapproachable, that seems like a huge problem.
Yeah.
So how do we is there anything that we can do, and maybe this is it. I mean, maybe the evolution of the profession in what it looks like and everything else, maybe that's the answer.
Yeah.
But what do we need to do to make architects seem more approachable, and maybe getting to your point of the value and the success of projects?
So there are a lot of developers that want contractors to lead projects like housing developments. And um, I think that one thing architects should do, I know back in the day, the architect was a master builder. The architect was the one who did the construction documents, managed the construction, sometimes executed the construction. And I think it's safe to say that AIA has, let me see how I can word this. The documents that AI requires kind of creates this adverse relationship between architects and contractors where we are pitted against each other and we're looking over each other's shoulders. And they really see us as just we're just here to make their jobs hard and make projects hard and create codes that can't possibly be reached. And it's I think there's that. I think if like I really want to hire a contractor who is familiar with architecture, or more importantly, hire an architect who has experience in construction, and I think that might make us more approachable because contractors don't really have the rigorous um, educational like requirements that we do. And so they really see us as elitists also. And I think that's one thing that could be humbling is making sure that we're able to work with the public and we're not in the office in front of the computer only and really building the building from our desk. We're out and we're with people and we're in the community and we're in the neighborhoods and we're with the clients on both ends of things. So, that's really been my experience as someone who grew up in public housing and then oversaw construction and demo public housing and has been in construction management. I think it's going to take us to go back to being master builders and really taking a better understanding of like what should be required to be successful in this industry. Like, are we really filtering people out? I think we are. I know we are. It's that the population says we are. And hi, Harold, by the way, another of my classmates, Harold Remelinger. I didn't know so many people I know were listening to this podcast.
They're here. I told you. I've been getting all these messages. They're all here. It's your class reunion.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, LTU was and still is a big part of my professional development. I've been an instructor there for a senior design class, and but I think conversations like this is also what's going to help Jeff. Just I think the storytelling element of things, I'm a really huge advocate for that. Making sure that like that element is there to really just bring us back to conversations. And the more people who can hear my story and just kind of hear of things from my point of view, it is going to help with the way that we approach our projects. And I talk a little bit more about this. And I have a friend named Kat Holmes who's really impacting the industry of the user experience, whether it be gaming, whether it be like she's been at Google, she's been at Salesforce, she's been everywhere. She just put out a book called and everything in tech mostly, but it's called Mismatch: How Inclusion Shapes Design. And I have a chapter there called With and For, where we talk about 400 Forward. She came here from Seattle. I took her to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of what Detroit embodied. She really got down to the nitty gritty of doing her research and trying to understand how she could make an impact in the inclusion space. And some of the things that she touches on in that book, just to give some answers on how to approach things as far as my story goes, is seeking out points of exclusion as one of them, identifying situational challenges. That could be really done by just talking to me about you might have a student that's never even been on a college campus before, and the student is in your class now.
Right.
That's a situational challenge that knowing that, or at least understanding that, you might be able to better help that student instead of telling that student maybe architecture isn't what you should study. That's actually happening. It happened to me not that long ago when I was in college. It happened recently to one of my mentees who's in a grad school program. Other things like recognizing personal biases. A lot of times folks kind of come in and insert their understanding or needs on what a project should be and the way it unfolds. Just those are the types of things that you can find in that book, and just learning more about storytelling. Like, the book is full of stories about how cars are exclusive to the male use. So like when they were first created, it's storytelling and learning more about experiences of those who have been excluded or feel excluded is how we will make the change. Conversations like this.
I could not have planned it any better for you to kind of come around and start talking about storytelling, because one, I've studied storytelling, has been a part of my work for a long time. I've been studying storytelling for a long time, and one of the things that we always say is the story you tell yourself is the most important story. And then another foundational piece of that is that successful storytelling requires that the listener or reader, or however they're consuming it, is able to identify themselves in the hero.
I agree.
And I think what you're doing is perfection when it comes to those two things. I mean, your ability to tell yourself the story from the time that you were a little girl to where you are now, and then translate and tell that story so that others can see that and follow in your footsteps is just truly inspirational. So I really thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for being here and sharing your story, continuing to share your story, and helping us understand what we can do and how we can help. So Tiffany Brown, thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your interest and just hearing more about who I am. And I appreciate all the readers. I'll be seeing all of your comments. Yes, everybody should join NOMA.
And stop paying Ed Carp.
So yeah, that's a good one. So just if you can at least join us in Nashville. We just launched registration for our conference yesterday. So we would love to see you there. We will be in Portland. Ooh, I probably wasn't supposed to say that yet because it hasn't been announced yet.
Yep, breaking news.
Yeah, we didn't hear anything.
2024. But yeah, it's just been a journey, and I am honestly just doing what I love. I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it led me to meet Michelle Obama. It led me to meet Barack Obama, President Obama, when I was in Chicago. And I don't know if there's anybody who can say that they've met both of them at AA conference besides me. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it really has been a rewarding journey for me, and I just like to
Excellent.
talk about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us. And everybody that's out there in the audience, whether you're live now or you're watching or listening to this later, two resources, two places to go. NOMA, NOMA.net is the address for the website for the National Organization of Minority Architects,
Mhm.
and then 400 forward, so 400, the number 400 forward spelled out, jam those two things together. 400forward.com is the URL for Tiffany's movement. I'm going to call it 400 forward. So check out both of those places and or both of those sites and support them. Do what you can to help change the story and help us move everything in a positive trajectory. So, again, Tiffany, really appreciate you joining us here today. Everybody in our audience, thank you. Just a reminder that next week on Context and Clarity Live, we'll be joined by Michael Ford, the hip hop architect. Um, we've
Huh.
we've been waiting a little bit. Michael is a recent recipient of the Young Architect Award in Wisconsin. I think most famous as hip hop architect, but that'll be another fun and exciting conversation. So join us for that next Thursday. And between now and then, of course, we will have our daily context and clarity conversations where we explore what matters most to your success in the profession. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for all of your comments, for being here, and for sharing all of this as well. Be well, stay safe. Please take a little bit of time to breathe, relax, find some way to rejuvenate, because we do this every day. It's a long journey. Thanks for going along it with us. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.